The USS Johnston fought an entire Japanese fleet alone and lost so badly that what happened next shouldn't have been possible. For 70 years, historians told the same story about the battle off Samar on October 25, 1944. A small American destroyer escort, the Johnston, faced down a Japanese battle group and charged straight at them. Suicidal bravery, textbook sacrifice. The kind of story that gets taught in academies because it's about honor overcoming impossible odds. There's just one problem: that's not what actually happened. On that October morning, Commander Ernest Evans faced a choice that no officer should ever have to make. His radar showed him the numbers: a Japanese task force bearing down with battleships, cruisers, and destroyers. The Johnston was 100 tons of steel and 340 men. The Japanese fleet weighed roughly 60,000 tons combined. Evans knew those odds. He calculated them in real time, standing on his bridge, with maybe 90 seconds to decide what to do. The accepted story says Evans charged out of pure courage, but that's reading backwards into the moment. What Evans actually did was calculate that staying still meant certain death for his crew, and that attacking, however unlikely to succeed, might buy time for the transport ships behind him carrying 500 American soldiers. He chose the option that cost the most but saved the most lives. For 3 hours, the Johnston dodged, fired, maneuvered, and burned. The Japanese threw shells the size of cars at a ship barely wider than a tennis court. Somehow, the Johnston stayed afloat, but by late afternoon, the damage was catastrophic. The engine room flooded. The steering failed. Evans gave the order to abandon ship. The USS Johnston sank at 1,710 hours. 86 men died that day, but here's where the real story gets strange. The wreck didn't stay where it went down. Ocean currents, depth, pressure, and time moved it, and it kept moving deeper and deeper until it ended up somewhere that shouldn't have been possible to find. In 2023, a research team led by Victor Vescovo located the Johnston at 456 meters below the surface. That's 180 feet. That's deeper than Mount Everest is tall. That's the Sibuyan Sea in a trench so remote and so deep that finding a 376-foot destroyer there seemed impossible. Yet there it was. The conventional explanation for how the Johnston got so deep is simple. It sank in place, and decades of settling moved it downward. But the numbers don't match. The battle happened in relatively shallow water. The depth where they found it is nearly double what it should be. Something else moved that wreck. Researchers now believe the Johnston was carried by an undersea landslide. The Philippine Trench isn't stable. It shifts, it slides, it moves. A catastrophic slope failure sometime in the decades after the ship went down grabbed the wreck and dragged it down into the abyss. The ship didn't sink to that depth. It was buried by the earth itself. When Vescovo's submersible reached the wreck, the team found something unexpected. The ship was intact, not preserved, intact. The hull still recognizable, the superstructure still standing. At that depth, at that pressure, in near-freezing water, decay moves at a glacial pace. The Johnston hasn't aged in 80 years, it's frozen in time. But the real revelation wasn't the depth. It was what the wreck told us about Commander Evans's decision. He had maybe 90 seconds to choose. The information he had was incomplete, the odds were impossible, and yet the choice he made to charge saved 500 lives on those transport ships. He didn't know if it would work, he only knew the cost of doing nothing. That's the story the textbooks got wrong. It wasn't about suicidal bravery. It was about a man making the best decision he could with imperfect information under lethal pressure. Evans died believing he'd failed. The Japanese fleet broke through, but those 500 soldiers made it home. The victory was invisible, measured in lives not lost. Finding the Johnston at 456 meters didn't change what happened on that October day, but it changed how we understand it. The wreck became a monument not to a last stand but to a calculated risk. A commander who looked at impossible odds, did the math, and chose to spend his ship and his life to buy time for others. The Johnston sits in the Sibuyan Sea now, untouched, unreachable by most, visible only to machines that cost millions to operate. It's a tomb, it's a monument, and it's a reminder that the stories we tell about history are often the wrong stories until someone looks deeper. Subscribe, there's a new unsolved maritime mystery waiting every week. And some of them have even deeper secrets than the Johnston. Subscribe, there's a new unsolved maritime mystery waiting every week, and some of them have even deeper secrets than the Johnston.